Hello, welcome to Microsoft Azure training series powered by ATCSL. My name is Neeraj. I am an enterprise architect, Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate, and I will be your instructor for this course. So, what are we going to learn today? We will try to understand app services, app service plan, and app service environment. Our focus today will be to understand about the app services environment version 1 and version 2, and then we will also try to learn about app services and app service plans as well. This video is the part 1 of the section 2 of the Azure 101 certification for the Azure Administrator, and which is implement and manage application services. We will try to understand first about the app services, which is a PAAS offering from Azure, and then we will look into app services plan, and then we will dig deep into app services environment. We will also have a short demo and understand how the app service environment is configured. So even before we dig deep into each of them individually, just as a high-level overview of the app services environment is that it is a fully isolated and dedicated environment for running Azure App Service apps at high scale, securely, which includes web apps, mobile apps, and APIs. It is the deployment of the Azure App Service into a different subnet of the same virtual network for your organization or for your corporate. And this helps, or this allows your applications to interact with your corporate systems, giving you more flexibility to talk to the on-premises, you can say the SQL Server or any other applications hosted on-premises. And that is how the app services environments are helpful to us. We will start with app services. The app services in Azure is a PAAS offering that integrates Microsoft Azure websites, mobile services, and other services into a single service. It is a fully managed platform allowing you to run and scale your applications effortlessly. You can quickly build powerful web, mobile, and API apps using different programming languages of your choice. You can use .NET, you can use Python, you can use Java, you name it. You can also use PHP. So you can use any language of your choice. It also offers auto-scaling and high availability. And it also enables automated deployments from multiple sources. And we're going to see that in the demo for app services environment, app services, and app services plans. Moving forward, let us understand what an app service plan is. An app service plan represents the collection of physical resources for an app service. An app service plan can have multiple web apps. In other words, we can have multiple web apps created in an app service plan. We can consider an app service plan as a single compute resource, or call it a virtual machine. So therefore, for the billing purposes, if we create more than one web app or more than one app in a single app service plan, we will be charged only once, which is just opposite of creating multiple app services plan for each individual application, where we'll be billed each time we create a new app service plan. On the other hand, when we are creating multiple apps within the same app service plan, there can be an adverse effect on the performance of an application if the applications are using the same app service plan, because they will be competing for the same set of resources. Going a step further, this slide contains very important data referring to the Microsoft Docs, which contains the comparison between the different tiers available for the app service plan. So we have the free tier, we have the shared, we have the basic, we also have the standard, premium, and isolated. Now look at the extreme right, which is the isolated. This is specifically for the app services environment, because the app services environment only allows for the isolated tier, to be configured. Now, if we consider the free tier, we get just the 10 apps. We can just create 10 apps, whereas in the shared, we have 100. But all the other tiers like basic, standard, premium, and isolated, we have unlimited apps that we can create. Similar is the case with the disk space. With the free tier, we get just 1 GB of disk space, whereas with the shared also we get the 1 GB. With basic, we get 10 GB of disk space, standard 50, and premium is 250 GB. And the maximum number of instances, we can have up to 3 instances for the basic. We can have up to 10 instances for the standard. For the premium, we can have up to 20 instances. We'll look that into the demo as well. From the SLA perspective also, there is no particular SLA for the free and the shared, because free is, you understand, right? It is a free tier. But for the shared, your application is hosted with the other customers as well. So even their application competes for the same set of resources. For the basic, we have 99.95%, and for the standard and premium also, we have 99.95% of a service level agreement. The continuous deployment, although is available for all the tiers, but for the deployment slots, just the standard, premium, and the isolated tiers have the deployment slot availability. You can create multiple deployment slots. We can, for the deployment tools, we can clone the apps in the premium and isolated. Cloning an app enables us to create or to replicate the app in a different region. Site extensions are available for all, and testing in production, that is available only in the standard, premium, and isolated tiers. And so on and so forth. For the scale, if you come down to the table, for the scaling, auto scale is available for standard, premium, and isolated. For the integrated load balancer, ILD, we have it for the shared, basic, and all the other 3 tiers, standard, premium, and isolated, but it is not available for the free tier. The traffic manager is only available for the standard, premium, and isolated, whereas the backup and restore also has the same configuration. We have the custom domains which can be configured in the shared, but not in the free. And if I say it is available in the shared, it is available in the basic, standard, premium, and isolated as well. For the SSL, it is available in the basic tier, in the standard, in the premium, and in the isolated tiers. But in the free and the shared, we don't have the support for the SSL certificates. So we can have HTTP request, but not an HTTPS secured requests. So this is something that all of us should be, this is very important for them from the exam perspective, because at time when they will ask questions about the app services environment, they might say that we need to create we need to have more than 3 instances or up to 10 instances. So what are you going to suggest? Similarly, they might say that they need 12 GB of the disk space. Now, as per this table, we can have only 10 GB of disk space in the basic tier, whereas in the standard tier, we can have 50 GB of space. But if they are talking about more than 10 GB, it is obvious that we need to opt for the standard tier. So we need to learn this table by heart and remember it from the exam point of view. Next is the app services environment. The app service environment, on the other hand, is a deployment of the Azure App Service into your own Azure virtual network and runs on a separate SKU, which is called the isolated SKU. The second generation of the ASE is generally referred to as ASE v2, whereas the previous version was referred to as ASE v1. This enables your apps to have direct access to the corporate resources over the site-to-site VPN or the express route connections. In the demo that we are going to see today, does not contain anything about the site-to-site VPN creation or the express route connection creation because that is out of scope. But we will definitely see how to configure the app services environment. The ASEs are isolated to running only a single customer's application and are always deployed into a virtual network in a different subnet. Customers have fine-grained control over the inbound and outbound application network traffic, and applications can establish high-speed, secure connections over VPN to on-premises corporate resources, as I've already mentioned, because that way your app services environment, any application would be able to communicate with the on-premises apps or on-premises resources like SQL Server as a backend. Customers can create multiple app services environments within a single Azure region or across the multiple Azure regions. This flexibility makes app services environments ideal for horizontally scaling stateless application tiers in support of high RPS workloads. App services environments, that is ASEs, are appropriate for application workload that require very high scale, isolation and secure network access, and the high memory utilization. An app services environment, ASE, can either be internet-facing with a public IP address or internal-facing with only an Azure internal load balancer address. If you deploy the ASE in a virtual network that has a VPN connection to the on-premises network, the apps in the ASE can access the on-premises resources. And this can be done using either the site-to-site VPN or an express route. So when I talk about the site-to-site VPN, although this is not the part of this course, but we need an application gateway to be created in a separate subnet of the same virtual network. And the app services environment is also configured in a separate subnet of the same virtual network. And mind you, when we are having different resources in different subnets of the same virtual network, they can communicate with each other. Now, the best example would be in case if you wish to leverage the on-premises database with the applications hosted on ASE. If you see at the diagram, I already mentioned that the app services environment only supports the isolated tier. And when we are going to see the demo, I'll show you how the other tiers are not available. And we only have the I1, I2, and the I3 as the isolated tiers for the ASE to be configured. And now that we have built our understanding on the app services environment, let us see the differences between ASE v1 and ASE v2. Although these kind of differences are not asked in the examinations, but for our own knowledge purposes, we should be understanding the difference or what new has come with ASE v2, which was not there in ASE v1, or how ASE v1 was better than ASE v2 and vice versa. So for the ASE v1, we have the resources which are managed manually. This includes the front ends, the workers, and the IP-based SSL, whereas for ASE v2, no manual intervention is required to scale out the front ends or the workers. So the front ends actually are the ones that receive the HTTP or the HTTPS request, whereas the workers are the actual apps. And all the infrastructure is automatically added as the customers scale out their app service plans. Now for ASE v1, we pay for each allocated virtual CPU, which includes both front ends and the workers that are not hosting any workloads. Whereas for the ASE v2, there is a flat monthly rate for an ASE v2, and there is an additional cost per app services plan virtual CPU. So we have a flat rate, as I said, And then for each hour that is consumed for the virtual CPU, we are going to pay for that app service plan individually. For the app services environment version 1, that can be configured with up to 50 compute resources for exclusive use by the single application. Whereas for ACV2, we can host 100 app service plan instances. This range can span 100 instances in a single app service plan to 100 single instance app service plan and everything that is in between. For ACV1, that can be deployed on both classic and classic virtual network as well as the resource manager virtual network, which is, so when I talk about the classic virtual network, it was the previous version that Azure had, and the resource manager with the ARM templates, that is the newer version of the Azure. But for ACV2, that can be deployed only on the resource manager virtual network on the new version and does not support classic virtual network at all. Let us now dive into the demo and see how app services environments are configured, and based on that, how the app service plan and app services are created as well. So for the demo, the first thing we are going to do is to fire up a browser and go to portal.azure.com. So we'll type in portal.azure.com, the authentication happens, and we are into the portal. So once we are into the portal, we'll click on the resource group and we see that I already have the ATCSL resource group created, and this resource group has 4 different entries into it. One is the ATCSL VNet, which is the virtual network that I already created, and this has to be created because it is a part of our the app services environment. We need to create the VNet because the app services environment, as I already told you before, needs to be in the different subnet of the same virtual network. And then we also have the app services environment by the name of ATCSL ASE, because this ATCSL ASE, this app services environment, takes more than 2 hours to get configured, and that is the reason I have already configured it. But for sure, I'm going to show you how to create the app services environment and the Azure virtual network. So first of all, for creation of the virtual network, we go to the virtual networks and click on add. We give a name, and then we also give the address space. My subscription is pay as you go. We then have the resource group, which is the ATCSL. The location here is East US2. Then we have a subnet that we need to create, and we need to create 2 different subnets, one separate for the app services environment, and then we click on create. Nothing more fancy into it. So in the similar fashion, I created this ATCSL VNet. I'll leave it as is. And we see that we have the address space of 10.0.0.0/16. This location is East US2. The subscription is pay as you go. And then we go to the subnets. I told you that I had created 2 different subnets. One specifically for the app services environment, which is AC_subnet, and the address space is 10.0.2.0. So once I have these 2 subnets created, the next thing that we are going to do is to create the app services environment. So we will type in app services environment. We will click on the app services environment, not the version 1. And there you go. I'll give it a name. So for our case, it was ADSL ASE, but since it is already taken, it shows me the warning. So I need to give it a different name. And this is just for the demo purposes. Mind you, I already have this ADCSL ASE, which I've already created. So just as to show you, I have renamed it to 1. The subscription is pay as you go. I'm using the existing resource group. For the virtual network, you see, right, I have the ADSL ASE 1 virtual network. When I click on it, I see that the virtual network ADCSL VNet is there in the East US location. So for now, we'll not create this, but this is how the app service environment is configured. One thing that you need to take care of, let me close this, and I'll come to the virtual network. Here I'll the virtual IP type I'll select as internal, and I'll give it a domain. This can be any domain, mind you, ABC or XYZ or atcsl.com, whatever. That doesn't matter because it is an internal domain and is not on the public internet. And that is it. So nothing more fancy into it. We'll just click on OK and click on create. But here in this case, I'll close. Yes, because I already have the ASE created. So we'll go to the resource, which is the ATCSL ASE, and I'll show you the configuration there. It's still populating. Yes, it's done. So see the domain name. It is atcsl.com. It is not validated because it is in a virtual network which is internal to the corporate. With the virtual network of ATCSL underscore VNet, and the subnet is ASE underscore subnet, which is a different subnet in the same virtual network. The second thing that we are going to do is to create an ILD certificate. Why? Because it uses the self-signed certificate or the certificate that we need because of the HTTPS request that we need to create. So what we are going to do, we are going to fire up the PowerShell, and I have this command already prepared, and I'll create a self-signed certificate, which is a wildcard certificate for atcsl.com and scm.atcsl.com. This will help for the deployment for the kudu, and that is where the *scm.atcsl.com is required. We need to have a cert thumbprint, and we need to give it a file name. So it accepts the pfx, and that is where we are going to name it as atcsl.pfx. And then we have the password also, if you see, as convert to secure string, and we will export the certificate. So we have the certificate ready with us, and that is what we are going to upload it and configure for the internal load balancer. So if you see, that's the path. We'll go there, we'll click on the certificate, copy the certificate, we'll open the browser, I'll upload the ILB certificate, which is the self-signed certificate. And for the password, we know that it is work for ADCSL. Type in the password and click on upload. So now we have the certificate uploaded, and we have the thumbprint, which is an encrypted key and valid for 1 year. So next thing is the app service plan. I'm sorry, app service plan. We'll click on app service plan. And here we are not now going to name the app services plan as ATCSL ASP. We are going to use the same resource group, which is the ATCSL. The operating system is going to be Windows. The location is ATCSL ASE, which is a East US 2. And if you see, we have the app services environment because that is what we had already created, and then we have the regions. But if we are going to use the app services environment, we'll not be able to select the tier other than isolated. So we have the pricing tier, as I already mentioned, it cannot be other than the isolated, and therefore by default the pane that we have is for the isolated tier only. So we'll click on create. It's validating, and once the validation is successful, the app service plan will be getting deployed. So we see that the deployment of the app services plan was pretty quick. We'll click on it. And here we have the options for scale up and scale out. We'll click on the scale up. Again, you see that there is nothing in the dev test and the production. We only have the isolated tier, which is I1, I2, and I3. And we also have the features which are included in the isolated tier. So it includes the single tenant, it includes the isolated network, and all the other features. Now, scaling out is one option that we have. We can increase the count to 20, and we can enable the auto scaling. So once the auto scaling, we click on it, we need to create a rule, which is the scale based on the metric. And we have the CPU percentage, which is greater than 75%, increase the count by 1. For initial start, we have the default of 2. The minimum can be a 2 CPU and the maximum can be 10. But after each increment of CPU percentage by 75, the CPU instance will be increased by 1. And that is the rule that I have created here. I'll save the changes. And the changes are saved. Okay. The third step, we are going to create the app services. We'll click on add and we will choose a web app. We'll click on create. And here we are going to name the web app. So if you see the app service plan, it is ATCSL ASP because that is the app services plan that I created. And the brackets, if you see, it is ATCSL ASE because that is the app services environment that was used. And since we have the app services plan as ATCSL ASP, we have the domain name as atcsl.com. So we are going to give it a name, and the resource group is ATCSL, the subscription is pay as you go, and the name is, let me think of a good name, ATCSL demo app. Yeah. Okay. So we'll click on create. The validation is successful and the deployment is in progress. So the web app has been created. We now go to the resource. We'll go down. We'll look at the deployment centers because that is how the code will be deployed. We have different options like Azure Repos, we have GitHub, we have Bitbucket, we have local Git, OneDrive, Dropbox, external and FTP. And for our demo purposes, today we are going to use the Dropbox. If you see, my name is already there and I've already created this as a repository for pushing the code. And if you see, since the name of the app was ATCSL demo app, that is the folder that it will be creating in the Dropbox. For now, we have different other folders, but ATCSL demo app will be created. Let us fire up a different browser and see how the Dropbox look, and whether the folder is there already or not. So we'll click on the browser, we'll open up, and we will open up dropbox.com. So we'll go to apps and we'll go to Azure, and we see that there are two folders, and we do not have ATCSL demo app. But once we click on continue and we finish it, this configuration will automatically create a folder with the name of ATCSL demo app. So we'll click on finish. Once that is done, we see that we have the demo app created and there is a success. Okay, so for now the synchronization says 0, synchronized 0 changes from the Dropbox because it doesn't have anything. I have the Dropbox the desktop app already installed on my desktop, so I'll go there. And I see that the go back, click on apps, Azure, and I see that the ATCSL demo app was created. Okay, what we are going to do next is to push the files there, and for now we see that the folder is empty. There's one file that I'll copy from there and put it inside the ATCSL demo app, paste it, or what I can do is I can go to the Dropbox, go to Azure, go to ATCSL app, and from here I'll select it and I can copy it or move it. So I'll copy it to the ATCSL demo app, I'll copy, and that is done. So now I'll go to Azure ATCSL demo app and I see the index.html. Next is I'll go back to my Azure UI. Yes, so it is there in the ATCSL demo app as well in the folder on the on-premises, that is on my desktop. So we are there in the Azure UI, and when I click on sync, it was pending and now it shows success. So if I do multiple synchronizations, it will be syncing up. But if you see on the check-in message on the right hand side, it shows for the second option, for the second time it shows the synchronized 1 changes, but the rest of them shows so for the rest of them it shows that 0. I'll sync again, it will say 0 again. So anytime you do, unless and until there is a specific change, it will show that as the synchronized item. Otherwise it will show that there are 0 synchronized items. Okay, and that is how the contents are synchronized. So the next thing we should do is to create a virtual machine. And this is to show you how you can access the app services from inside the virtual machine. Just to demo that the virtual machine within the virtual network in a different subnet can communicate or can access the apps in the app services environment of a different subnet of the same virtual network. So we'll create a virtual machine. We'll name it as ADCSL VM1. The location is going to be East US2. We'll leave the availability option as is. The image we are going to do is Windows Server 2016 Data Center. We'll give it a username. We'll leave the size as is, 1 virtual CPU, 3.5 GB memory. For the username, we are going to use ATCSL admin. We'll give it a password with the recommended size and settings. It passes the validation and will pass in the same password for the confirmation. So once that is done, we will review and create. But even before that, what we are going to do is I'm going to allow public inbound ports, and I'll do it as an RDP. If you see, these ports will be exposed to the internet, and we should be very, very careful in doing that. But for our demo purposes, we are good. So once everything is done, we'll just, for the reference purposes, we'll check the networking. If you see, it is in the ADCSL VNet and virtual network, and it is in the different subnet of the same virtual network as we have it for app services environment. We will review and create. The validation is running. Once the validation is successful, we will click on create and the deployment will start happening. So we will pause the video and we will come back when the deployment is complete. Okay, now the deployment is successful. We'll go to the resource and we see that the resources status is running. I have the public IP address and it shows me the virtual network in the subnet name, which is the ATCSL VNet with the subnet of ATCSL VNet subnet 1. We will go and see the availability set, but we don't have any availability set created. So we'll go to networking. We'll see that the RDP was created for us on the port 3389 and it allows. The warning I have already explained, this is on the public internet. That is why it is showing as the warning, but we are good for now. So our virtual machine is now up and running. We'll click on overview again and we will click on connect. We will download the RDP file. Click open, connect, give it the username and the password that we had given during the configuration. So which was ATCSL admin, I suppose. Let me try. And the password. We'll click on OK. Yes, we are connected. So it is preparing the virtual machine for us for the first time. And here we are inside our virtual machine. So once we have the virtual machine ready and it is up and running, we'll try to open the Explorer. It is taking time because it has limited resources. and just give it a couple of more seconds, and we will try to open the Internet Explorer. Yeah, there it goes. So File Explorer has opened, and we'll also try and open the Internet Explorer. The browser has come up. We'll maximize the browser and we'll see the address for it. So we'll go to App Services, we'll click on ADCSL Demo App, and we see that that's the URL, adcsldemo-app.adcsl.com. We'll copy it, go back to the virtual machine, the VM is a little slow and acting a little, but never mind. We'll paste the URL. Oh, come on. Be patient. Okay, so we'll click on go and let us see what happens. So it is taking time, and it seems that it doesn't bring the page. Why? Because this particular virtual machine is connected to the network, and the page it is trying to find is on a public domain, and it is trying to find the page on the internet. So just to prove that it is on the internet and it has internet accessibility, we'll try to have google.com, type in google.com, and see if that works. Does it or does it not? So we'll add it. I think it works now. Yes. So it shows that this is on the public internet, but when we try to do ATCSL demo app.atcsl.com, since ATCSL is a domain name which is used internally, but it is trying to find out on the public internet, it is not able to find out the application. So let us do one thing. Let us create the host entry in the hosts file. We'll close this. We'll let us open the File Explorer. Go to C, Windows, System 32, where it is. Down below, we have System 32. Then we have drivers, etc, and we have hosts. We'll right click it and open with Notepad. And we'll make an entry for ATCSL demo app. So generally it does not require the HTTP or the HTTPS. That protocol is not required. Only the domain with the alias name is more than enough. And it will also need the IP address that it should point to, so that it can go there and see the app service domain. So we'll have to find out the IP address, and then we can have that IP address mentioned in the hosts file. Okay. Come on. Let us look at the properties. Yes, and that is the virtual IP address. So 10.0.2.11 We'll copy that and we'll paste it, and we will save the changes. So now we have the entry for the ATCSL demo app.atcsl.com with the IP address of 10.0.2.11 inside the hosts file. So we will save the changes. We'll close the file, and then we will go to our browser and try to see if it works or not. Yes, it does. So this is something it shows. We recommend that you close this web page because that is a self-signed certificate, if you remember, that we configured. That is not a certificate that we purchased from the certificate authority. It's just a self-signed certificate. That is the reason it shows this message. We'll continue. And this is the page that we index.html that we had pushed through Dropbox. This is a test for ATCSL ASC. Let us try and make some changes to the web page and see if that is pushed. So you remember ATCSL demo app, that was the page. We'll edit with Notepad. We'll change from lower caps to upper caps L, and let us type in some extra text, which is, we can communicate with the same virtual network in a different subnet. Okay, we'll click on save, and then we are going to the Azure UI, and we will go to the app services. We will go to the deployment center, and yes, and then we will click on the sync button again and see if the changes have been synced. So it is pending. Now it is success. Now if you see there, it shows synchronized 1 changes. We'll come back to the virtual machine, click on refresh, and there you go. We can communicate with this within the same virtual network in a different subnet. Now if you see, we have this virtual machine inside the different subnet of the same virtual network, and it is able to access the app services, or the app that we had created, and which is a part of the app services environment of a different subnet of the same virtual network. And this concludes the demo for the app services environment configuration, and this very well explains how to configure the app services plan and app services as well. So going further, we can also create the internal load balancers, and different aspects are also there, but for now that is not a part of this demo. In summary, what have we learned today? Today, we developed an understanding of the app services, which is the PAAS offering from Azure. We also learned about the app service plan, which can be considered as the compute resource or a virtual machine. And we also developed an understanding of the app services environment, which is a fully isolated and dedicated environment for running Azure App Service apps at a high scale, securely, which includes the web apps, mobile apps, and the APIs. It can be considered as a deployment of the Azure App Service in a different subnet of your virtual network connected with your on-premises through site-to-site VPN or the express route, and also allows your application to interact with your corporate systems, giving you more flexibility. Hope this session was helpful to you. You can download the training material from the Azure Training blog site. Thank you for joining in. Keep Azuring.